And we are back for part 2 of the bullet in the chamber argument with Ariel Siegelman, president of the DRACO group. We have had some interesting back and forth about this topic and some people giving us their thoughts and opinions. So here to tell us more is Ariel.
There's some people out there who, surprisingly enough, have gotten really kind of emotional about this topic. I don't think there's anything to get emotional about, guys. All right, we're just talking about like bullet in the chamber versus no bullet in the chamber. Maybe some of you don't know, the Israelis typically go without a bullet in the chamber, but not always, right? But we make a decision of when to put a bullet in the chamber, and that's really I think the difference between the two systems. So the one system says, always go with a bullet in the chamber, and the Israelis are saying, we don't always go with a bullet in the chamber. There's a time that we have it in, and there's a time that we don't. So how do we make that decision? Now, when somebody asks me, why not go with a bullet in the chamber? Well, I want to ask you, why go with a bullet in the chamber? What's the reason? Well, I think that most people will agree that the reason is for speed, right? So if I pull my weapon and I've got a bullet in the chamber and I need to use it, if I pull it, I need to use it, right? So what we're saying is, the argument is, I want to shorten the amount of time that it takes to be on target and be effective.
Yep.
No problem. Makes sense. There's also an element of safety. I hope everybody agrees with that. Now, what were guns made for, Celia?
To kill people.
Yes, thank you. Guns were made to kill people. And guys, there's going to be all kinds of conversations about like, no, guns were made for hunting, guns were made for putting on my wall and collecting and, you know, sports shooting. All that stuff is very nice and sweet, and but guns were invented to kill people. Now, a tool that was invented to kill people is not necessarily an evil thing. In the wrong hands, it is a tool of evil, but in the right hands, it is a tool of righteousness, because I can use that tool to save other people's lives from a direct threat with intent to cause harm to innocent people and myself.
Yep. Okay.
Now, if I know that a gun is a tool that was made to kill people, I have to implement careful safety. So we said in part 1, well, hey, if I'm worried so much about speed, why don't I always just walk around with my gun in my hand? And some people got really upset about that, and they didn't seem to understand that I was joking, guys. Because obviously, that is silly. But see, from the Israeli perspective, it is just as silly to constantly 100% of the time walk around with a bullet in the chamber. It's just as silly. Because a tool that was made to kill people, that tool, when it has a bullet in the chamber, whether you agree or not, it is just a fact that if it has a bullet in the chamber, it is at a higher level of danger than when it does not have a bullet in the chamber. It is a fact of nature. It is science.
Yes.
So we know that this tool has innate risk to it, that operationally speaking, I need to be able to utilize it for what it's made for, but I also need to be able to be safe with it at the same time. And those are kind of two things that are difficult to do, especially under high pressure.
Yeah.
Now, my mission, why do I carry a gun? As a civilian, or as a police officer, or as a soldier, or any other person, why would I carry a gun?
To protect yourself and others. And kill people.
Okay, well, you know, if I don't have to kill people, I'd rather not.
Okay.
But I agree with you that the reason to carry a gun is, I'll say it very succinctly, my mission as a human being who carries a gun is to reduce risk in the environment to myself and others. Not just to protect myself. I have an extra responsibility to take care of other people, and this is a tool, especially to take care of other people from threat of human intent coming to hurt people and kill them. Okay, so I must make sure that I am not increasing the risk in the environment, because then I'm stepping outside of the parameters of my mission. My mission is to reduce risk.
Yep.
If I am walking into a room and increasing the risk in the room, I'm outside of my mission.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry this Glock 40. I'm the only one.
Two categories of principles that enable us to operate with a combat firearm. Operational principles, safety principles. Okay, now, with that knowledge, I have to ask myself, well, what are the legitimate ways to carry a firearm that would enable me to operate with speed and accuracy, but also with safety? So I could walk with my weapon in my holster with no magazine in the weapon. This is the weapon status. No magazine in the weapon, no bullet in the chamber. Let's analyze that for a second. What does that offer me from an operational perspective? If I'm walking down the street and I was attacked and I needed to use my weapon, so operationally, if I measure it from 1 to 5 with this metric system, this would be, probably everybody would agree, this is a 1. Very, very low level of operational capability. But from a safety perspective, I'm at a 5. Okay? Now, that's not good enough. So now, a magazine in the weapon, no bullet in the chamber. What I do know is that from a safety perspective, there's a very, very low chance that there could be any kind of an accident that happens with that weapon. So I'm going to say a 5 in safety. And you know what? For the sake of argument, we'll say maybe a 4. Maybe it's a 4. From an operational standpoint, to be able to draw my weapon and use it, it's a 4, right? Because I've got to do an extra step. So it's a 4, and you know what? For all of the people who want to argue with me, I'll say, okay, maybe a 3. Maybe it's a 3. Now, bullet in the chamber. Let's say from an operational standpoint, you know, especially if it's already in my hand, then it's a 5 here. Okay, that's a 5 operationally. And on a safety level, it's actually a 1. Maybe a 2. Now, I know that there's going to be some argument here, and people are going to say to me, hey, it depends on whose hand it's in. If it's in some guy's hand who doesn't know what he's doing, then of course it's going to be very unsafe. But if it's in my hand, then it's going to be so safe, it's a number 10. Okay, guys, the problem is, if you're carrying your weapon with a bullet in the chamber, it's not in your hand usually, right? So walking around with it on my hip like this, I'm actually not in control of it. I'm in control of my weapon when it's in my hand. So from the Israeli perspective, if there's enough danger to have a bullet in the chamber, then it's also enough of a danger to have a weapon in my hand. And you know what? When I've got my weapon in my hand, and I put a bullet in the chamber, then I'm in control of the weapon. It's not my holster in control of the weapon. It's not the weapon stuck in between the seat and my center console that's controlling my weapon. It's me controlling my weapon. I think that we can all agree that according to these metrics, this first category is not a viable option for carrying for any kind of useful use of my weapon. So that leaves me with 2 options. Either I can carry without a bullet in the chamber, or I can carry with a bullet in the chamber. And really what it comes down to make that decision for most people is speed. So now let's talk about speed for a second. I know that from the Israeli standard, I should be able to take my weapon from a concealed position, if I'm talking about a pistol obviously. Concealed position, no bullet in the chamber, put a bullet in the chamber, first round on target at 30 feet, 10 meters. I should be able to do that in 1.2 seconds. If I can't do it in under 2 seconds, I'm not a professional operator. Okay, now, bullet in the chamber, I know is faster. So, from the Israeli standard, I know that I should be able to do that in 0.8 seconds. So the difference between those two is 0.4 seconds. Okay? 0.4 of a second is really what we're talking about here in terms of speed. Now let's talk about safety again. So I know that I'm using a tool that was made to kill people. I know that this tool has inherent risk that is greater when there's a bullet in the chamber than when there's not a bullet in the chamber. So my whole decision-making process needs to be based on the threat and risk in the environment and according to the situation. So there's going to be some situations that I determine I need that extra 0.4 of a second. Like, for instance, going in on a combat operation or going on some sort of a police operation. I probably need that 0.4 of a second. And it would be increasing the risk in the environment to myself and others by not having a bullet in the chamber. However, if I'm eating lunch with my children, and then maybe I will still have that 0.4 of a second to be able to decrease the level of increase the level of safety, but still keeping a pretty high level of operational capability. And this is the foundation for how we make our decisions in the Israeli method. In other words, this is why you'll see Israelis occasionally have a bullet in the chamber, but usually we won't, because usually the situation does not dictate that 0.4 of a second is necessary to reduce the safety status of my weapon, thereby increasing the risk in the environment, thereby making me not compliant with my mission of decreasing risk in the environment to myself and others. So a lot of people talk about speed, and speed is the reason for keeping a bullet in the chamber 100% of the time. But how many people actually knew that when they talk about speed, they're really talking about 0.4 of a second? I mean, that's a pretty small increment, right? Putting a bullet into the chamber should never be a mindless action. It should be a clear and distinct decision that you take based on your mission. And your mission is to reduce the risk in the environment to yourself and others. So what that means is that you and I, if we're going to carry a gun, have an additional responsibility of constantly doing risk assessments in our environment. Every room we walk into and every mall we walk into, we need to be assessing the environment and understanding that, asking the question ultimately of, am I increasing the risk in the environment or decreasing the risk in the environment with the status of my weapon? So, guys, I believe that a system that is viable, a combat system that is viable, must be based on metrics and on science. And so whatever you're going to do, if you're going to carry a bullet in the chamber, that's fine, but think it through very carefully and know that your mission is to reduce risk. Make sure you are not increasing risk, and don't fool yourself to think that a gun with a bullet in the chamber doesn't somehow increase the risk of that tool. So that's what we got for you today, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. At least I hope that you appreciate the thought process behind this methodology, and be safe. We're always looking to put more tools in our toolboxes, right? So thanks for watching.